What is up everyone, Andrew here, back with another video for you. Today I wanted to revisit a phone that I did a video on a while back. It's the iPhone SE. I just wanted to share some insight on it and see if it's still a good phone in the year 2020 and going forward. I know there's not a lot of options for small phones out there these days, but let's talk about it. The first thing that I want to talk about with this phone is the design. It is honestly so small compared to the other phones that you're going to find on the market these days, but it's not uncomfortable to use, surprisingly. So for reference, the screen size on the iPhone SE is 4 inches from corner to corner. The screen size on the iPhone 11 that came out this past year is 6.1 inches from corner to corner. So if you were to take an iPhone SE and put that inside of an iPhone 11, there'd still be a lot of room to spare around the iPhone SE on that screen. So it's kind of crazy how small phones were just a couple short years ago, but for the most part, this phone is not uncomfortable to use at all. And I might even say that it is a preferable size for some people who are either like just getting their first phone when they're pretty young, or if they have smaller hands, or if they just like the form factor of the smaller device. I think it's a really good phone for you. And this phone does still have a home button, which means that integrated into it is Touch ID, which is something that I still prefer to use over Face ID, just because I like using it, or I don't know, fun to use for the most part, so it's nice to have it here. And the display on this phone gets pretty bright, and it looks good, and it looks sharp and everything, but it's hard not to notice those top and bottom bezels, that forehead and chin on the display. Stark contrast to all the phones that are coming out these days, but I still think it looks like a really good phone. It's really comfortable to use, and I love the way it looks. Next up are the cameras on this phone, and there's one on the front, one on the back. That's it. Unlike some of the newer phones that you're going to get these days, there's only one camera on the back, but despite that, it still takes really good pictures and really good videos, and I'd highly recommend it. Not anything really game-changing or super high quality, but it's still there, and I love the way that it looks. And one thing to note is that there is no camera bump on this phone. It is completely flat, so if you put it on a table or something, it's not going to be rocking around. So the cameras seem like they would be enough for most people, but what might not be enough is the battery life on this phone. Kind of struggles to make it through a full day of light to moderate use, and that could be because it is a 4-year-old phone, a 4-year-old battery that might not be holding up as well as it did when it was first released. But for the most part, you might have to charge it once a day just to keep it going throughout the course of the day, but it's still a really good phone. It's pretty decent battery life. Something that goes hand in hand with the battery life of a phone is its performance. The iPhone SE is not a powerhouse by any means, but it's definitely no slouch. It does take a little bit of time to load up apps, and it has trouble keeping them open in the background, like if you've opened a lot of apps and you want to switch back to one you haven't been on in a while. Still takes a little bit of time, but for the most part, there's no real outstanding issues. Gets the job done. I'd say it's just fine. Something of note is that the iPhone SE is based off of the iPhone 5S that came out in 2013, but all the internal components and everything that makes it work is based off of the iPhone 6S, which came out back in 2015. So it's got a little bit of a speed boost and everything from the extra year or two of performance gains, and it looks pretty good by that measure. The last thing that I wanted to talk about with the iPhone SE is the software, and it still does run iOS 13, which is the latest operating system from Apple for iPhones, which is great. Not entirely sure if it's going to be supported for another year, but it's entirely possible. Not going to rule it out, but currently it runs fairly smoothly, and it does everything that somebody would need to do, for a basic cell phone, like browse the web, check email, check messages, and make phone calls and everything. So I think it does those things pretty well, and it's sufficient to use every day in 2020. Overall, this phone works great. I would say that I have had no issues with it whatsoever, just aside from the slowness, which happens very rarely. It's not frequent by any means. For the most part, this phone works great, looks great, and I think it's something that a lot of people would enjoy using. So I've really enjoyed using the iPhone SE, and I'm glad that I could share my insight with you. Should you go out and buy one of these right now? Probably not. I don't know. It's really up to you. If you prefer the smaller form factor of the phone, then I'd say go for it. But if you're coming from any iPhone that's like an iPhone 7 or 8 or newer, the trade-offs are going to be pretty significant unless you really prefer that smaller form factor. So I hope this helps. Hopefully you'll learn something. If you did, let me know down in the comments. I'd really appreciate that. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for watching.